let's have a look at this move by the South Australian Premier to have a blanket ban on social media for children under the age of 14. The Malinauskas Government has appointed a former High Court Chief Justice to examine the legal pathways required to impose a ban. Joe, this does seem sensible. I think that a lot of parents don't want their young children to be on social media, but they also don't want them to be left out or to be bullied. So if you have a government saying, right, you can't be on social media until you're 14, that's kind of problem
Absolutely.
solved.
I mean, that's right. The premise of all freedoms, and especially freedom of speech, is consenting adults. So yeah, immediately when you're talking about, we don't mind
taking away children's
That's
freedoms.
right. We don't let children drive cars, buy alcohol, watch pornography, and and I think we're getting to the point where social media is just as harmful, if not more so in some cases, than a lot of those scourges. It's in terms of just the way it gears your brain. We've seen in terms of the way it hurts kids' academic performance at school, their focus, their concentration, their sociability, exposure to bullying online, mental health, because you think that your life is crap because all you're seeing are sort of influencers on Instagram, living their best life and looking like everything's fantastic all the time. So again, I think the last thing you want to do, however, I suppose, make it more desirable. But as Malinauskas points out, smoking became more desirable when it was banned, but that doesn't mean that more kids did it than when or if it was available to everyone all the time and there were no restrictions.
What do you think, Liz?
I think obviously it sounds great on the face of it. The big question, and this is what the SA inquiry will look into, is how to enforce something like this. So at the moment, if you want to open up an account on either Instagram or Facebook, it's that by their own stipulation, you have to be over the age of 13. 13 is the very youngest you can open one, but of course kids lie, so that hasn't served its purpose. What would it take, though, for the government to be able to police that? And that's where we see things like when the Morrison government first looked into this in 2022, again, with regard to online abuse and how can we crack down on this, they had an inquiry, and one of the recommendations that came back was a credit system in which if you wanted to have a social media account, you would have to supply the platform with 100 points of identification, your driver's license, your passport, etc., and so on, in order to use your account. So
that would also
very curious to see
anonymous trolls as well.
How, but very curious to see, because people also do have a right to privacy online, and it bears mentioning that a lot of people who choose to be anonymous online aren't just the trolls, they are conservatives like Libs of TikTok, very famous case there, who ended up being doxxed and her identity was made known, but known across the world. She's brilliant content, but she had chosen to keep herself anonymous because she knew by sharing this conservative content, I will be made to pay dearly in my personal life. So I think there's no way to enforce something like this without railroading people's privacy.
Very quickly, budget tomorrow.
Yes, it will be incredibly boring. But please stay tuned. Please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. I'm going into the lockup. I think the Treasurer's
walking a fine line.
That's exactly right. And I think he knows it will be boring. He knows that he's really got to. This is going to be a really tricky one to land. He's got to thread the needle, as they say. He knows that people are crying out for relief because of the cost of living pressures that we all know too well. But of course, any relief that he does give runs the risk of being inflationary. So again, it's just that catch-22 cycle where people are hurting because of high inflation. So you help them, but that could cause high inflation. So you can't help them, but then they're hurting. So I think he's provided a very bullish forecast that by early next year, inflation will be back down between 2 and 3%. I think that's pretty heroic. God, I hope he's right. And that's Treasury's forecast. The RBA is a bit less optimistic, but I think he'll really be trying to thread the needle. And to be honest, I think he's the perfect man for the job because he is a genuine moderate, a genuine centrist, and hopefully he will just sort of hold that middle line.
All right, Joe Hildebrand, Liz Storer, thank you both so much.
Thanks, Sharri.